Welcome to Global Byte. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Has the era of North American unity come to an end? For generations, the US-Canada border has stood as a symbol of peace and cooperation. But today, that symbol is under threat. Political tensions and economic retaliation are turning this line of friendship into a potential fault line. The Alaska transit route, once a routine artery of commerce, is now a geopolitical flashpoint. Canada is asserting control over its territory, challenging assumptions about access and movement. The US faces disruptions to a critical supply chain, exposing the limits of its influence. What began as threats of tariffs has escalated into targeted countermeasures from Canadian provinces. These aren't just policy debates, they're impacting truck drivers, business owners, and families on both sides of the border. Trust is eroding fast, and the world is watching as the bonds of a century-old friendship are stretched to the breaking point. The consequences reach far beyond North America, raising questions about the future of global alliances. This is the story of how quickly unity can unravel. The US-Canada relationship was built in the fires of war and cemented by decades of partnership. NORAD, joint military operations, and shared values have long defined this alliance. Economically, NAFTA and its successor created a vast integrated market. Billions in goods cross the border daily. The Alaska Highway, built together during WTN, is a monument to this cooperation. Treaties like the 1977 Transit Pipeline Agreement were meant to keep commerce flowing, even in tough times. But today, that mutual dependency is being weaponized. The very agreements designed to prevent conflict are now being tested. Canada and the US once trusted that trade and transit would rise above politics. Now, those legal frameworks are under strain, and the spirit of partnership is in jeopardy. The current standoff is more than a policy dispute. It's a challenge to the foundation of North American unity. The question, can decades of trust survive this new era of confrontation? This crisis didn't appear overnight. It's the result of rising protectionism and political brinkmanship. In early 2025, President Trump threatened sweeping tariffs on Canadian and Mexican goods, shaking the foundation of free trade. Canada responded with retaliatory tariffs, escalating the conflict into a full-blown trade war. But the real escalation came from the provinces. British Columbia led the charge, announcing plans for heavy tolls on US trucks using its highways to Alaska. This targeted Alaska's dependence on Canadian roads, making the dispute personal and immediate. Other provinces followed. Yukon halted liquor purchases from US companies. Ontario threatened surcharges on electricity exports. By 2026, border systems were breaking down, wait times soared, crossings closed, and the seamless border became a patchwork of obstacles. What began as a trade dispute has become a multi-front economic conflict. Each province is acting independently, making resolution harder. The border, once open and predictable, is now a source of uncertainty and tension. The escalation has exposed just how fragile North American cooperation can be. The world's longest undefended border is now a battleground for economic and political power. The stakes have never been higher. British Columbia's plan to toll US trucks is the centerpiece of Canada's provincial pushback. The tolls are designed to hurt, economically and politically, forcing the US to reconsider its tariffs. Premier David Eby has framed the move as a necessary defense of local industries. Implementing the tolls would require new infrastructure, but existing way stations could be adapted quickly. Legally, the US may challenge the tolls, citing historic agreements, but BC argues provincial control over highways is clear. The stage is set for a legal and diplomatic showdown. Eby has gone further, halting government purchases of US goods and banning alcohol from Republican-led states. These targeted measures make the conflict personal, hitting specific American industries and political groups. The strategy: maximize pressure, minimize delay. British Columbia's actions have transformed a broad trade dispute into a series of pointed, politically charged strikes. The message is clear: Canada's provinces are willing to fight back, and they're not pulling punches. The border is no longer just a line, it's a lever of power. British Columbia's boldness sparked a chain reaction across Canada. Yukon quickly imposed its own restrictions, halting liquor purchases from US suppliers and limiting American access to government contracts. Ontario, a major energy exporter, threatened a 25% surcharge on electricity to the US, a move that would hit American consumers hard. Each province is leveraging its own strengths, creating a patchwork of economic retaliation. This decentralized response complicates negotiations for Washington, which now faces multiple fronts. The province's actions have hardened the economic border, choking the once seamless flow of goods. These aren't just tariffs, they're creative, targeted, and designed for maximum impact. Canadian leaders are signaling they'll accept short-term pain for long-term leverage. The US can no longer take Canadian cooperation for granted. The border is now a battleground of competing interests, not a symbol of unity. The era of easy partnership is over. The new reality: every province for itself. For Alaska, this dispute is an existential crisis. The state relies on Canadian highways for time-sensitive, high-value goods, fresh food, medical supplies, and oil equipment. British Columbia's proposed tolls threaten to make this lifeline unaffordable. Trucking costs will soar, and those costs will hit Alaskan families at the checkout. Jamie Benson of the Alaska Trucking Association warns, higher prices, empty shelves, and supply chain chaos are imminent. Delays could cripple industries. One late part can halt oil production. One missed shipment can spoil food. Alaska's leaders are pleading for federal intervention, knowing the state can't win this fight alone. Governor Mike Dunleavy urges calm and diplomacy, fearing escalation will only make things worse. The state is caught in a conflict it didn't start, but will pay the highest price for. Alaskans are bracing for economic pain, hoping Washington and Ottawa can find a way out. The stakes are personal, immediate, and potentially devastating. Alaska's future hangs in the balance. The Alaska Highway dispute is just one front in a larger Arctic power struggle. Melting ice is opening the Northwest Passage, a potential shipping shortcut and a new geopolitical prize. Canada claims the passage as internal waters, imposing new restrictions to assert sovereignty. The US and allies insist it's an international strait, demanding free transit. The disagreement is escalating as the passage becomes viable for commercial and military use. For the US, an open route is vital for naval mobility, and as a backup supply line to Alaska. Canada's assertiveness is seen in Washington as a direct challenge to American interests. Russia and China are also expanding their Arctic presence, raising the stakes even higher. The conflict over land and sea routes is fueling a new Cold War in the north. Canada's willingness to use its geographic leverage signals a tougher, more independent foreign policy. The once friendly border is now a line of contention, both on land and in the icy Arctic waters. The future of Arctic security and trade is suddenly uncertain. On the ground, the crisis feels deeply personal. Yukon's Premier Ranj Pillai frames the countermeasures as a defense of Canadian sovereignty, not aggression. Many Canadians feel their country has been taken for granted by the US for too long. Alaska's Governor Mike Dunleavy calls for de-escalation, warning that tit-for-tat retaliation will only hurt ordinary people. Business leaders like Jamie Benson highlight the real-world impact, higher costs, delays, and economic pain for families. Political analysts warn this is a watershed moment. Unlike past disputes, this one is broader, more personal, and threatens the physical movement of goods. Canadian provinces are gambling that their leverage will force change in Washington. The risk: irreparable damage to a vital relationship. What's at stake isn't just trade, it's the very idea of a North American community. The Alaska transit dispute has exposed deep cracks in a relationship once seen as a global model. Retaliatory measures are more than economic, they're signs of broken trust. The future could go two ways: painful lessons leading to renewed diplomacy, or a permanent state of economic warfare. Even if peace returns, scars will remain, making future cooperation more cautious. In the worst case, the border hardens, and the world's longest undefended line becomes a symbol of lost friendship. The consequences for security and prosperity would be immense. This crisis is a stark reminder. Even the closest allies aren't immune to nationalism and protectionism. Peace and cooperation require constant effort and respect. The world is watching and learning how quickly unity can unravel. The future of North American partnership now hangs in the balance.